Right. Welcome everybody to Intro to Steeking. We're going to learn the falling into autumn knit headband pattern together. My name is Dana. I'm the editor of Fave Crafts, and I'm going to be emceeing today's class. If you're not familiar with Fave Crafts, we're a website that shares free craft tutorials from all over the internet. We have a variety of free email newsletters broken down by interest. Easy Does Knit is one of them. It's all easy knitting patterns. And we've got Trash to Treasure, we've got a general crafts newsletter, and many more. And you can sign up for any of them at favecrafts.com. We are recording today's class, and you'll get a copy of the recording in your email tomorrow. So just keep an eye out for that in about 24 hours. So if you don't have it in 22 hours, it'll be there soon. And we also put this on YouTube. So if you follow us on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, hello. If you follow us, Fave Crafts on YouTube, the video will be available there. You can use the Q&A feature to ask questions or the chat, and I will be relaying them to Molly throughout the class. And I think that's actually it for housekeeping. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Molly. Today's class is sponsored by the Hands-On Knitting Center, and Molly Conroy is a partner in the Hands-On Knitting Center. It's a 12, maybe 13-year-old now local yarn store, and Molly's been knitting for over 16 years, 17 years.
Yes.
All right. My intro might be a year old now, so
I know.
checking my numbers as I go. The Hands-On Knitting Center is an inviting store with a large table in the middle where all are welcome to bring projects in and get help for free anytime. The atmosphere means that they fix a lot of knitting and do a lot of teaching. This experience led Molly to look for ways to simplify the teaching of seemingly complex knitting techniques. She teaches for the Hands-On Knitting Center online and is taught for stitches in many local guilds. You can visit the handsonknittingcenter.com to sign up for free virtual help appointments, check out their upcoming virtual events, and of course, check out the yarn and the notions they're selling. Welcome, Molly.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be here and to be back. So yeah, I was sitting here trying to calculate how long have I been knitting. I think I learned in 2007. So whatever that is.
Okay.
So, yeah.
17 years, I think.
There you go. 17 years. Okay. So Dana and I talked last year after we taught a stranded knitting class, right? And stranded knitting is when you carry the yarn across the back in what look like strands. And you do color work that way. And stranded knitting is done in the round. Right. So when we did this class last year, we talked about, what sort of could be next. So we came up with this idea of doing a steeking class, right? The free demo is a steeking demo, I should say, and then doing a class for really more in depth. So for this one, we're not talking about how to do the actual knitting of the headband. We're really just talking about steeking. And then if you would care to join us for a class, we are going to do a class on the sweater that's right behind me with this exact same motif. So this was really designed for two purposes. One, I like a practical gauge swatch, right? And swatching color work in the round as just like a basic little swatch is really complicated. But if you do it in something where you can use a normal needle, like a size 16 needle, then it ends up being more like the way you're actually going to knit your sweater. So that's what this is. This is A, it's a headband if you don't want to do anything else. B, it is your color test to make sure, do I like how those colors are coming together? And then it is your chance to try steeking before you try it on a sweater, which is huge, right? Because it's really, if you mess up on a headband, it takes about an hour to knit one, you do another one, right? And you go ahead and try another technique. If you mess up on the sweater that you have spent, weeks knitting, that is very, very sad. So that's why we did the class the way we're doing it. So I pretty much talked about why we, I just want to make sure that it's really clear because people often have this question. Why do you have to do color work in the round? And the answer is you don't have to do it. But it is so much easier to carry and catch these floats when you're knitting in the round because your yarn is already back. When you're purling in the round, the yarn is towards you and catching those floats, right? These long strands that you would have that you don't want to be long, catching those floats is much more complicated in purl. And so we love to knit in the round. when we're doing color work. However, if you want a cardigan, then you need to be able to cut it open. And you can add steeking areas like for a V-neck in something, you can add them for the armhole. There are a lot of different ways of doing this. Okay, so the area that is called a steeking area is this little area right here. And here's the whole purpose of this. The purpose of creating that space is to give you an area that you're going to cut where you can very, very, very clearly see a line of stitches that you know you're going to cut, okay? And really what steeking is about is less about cutting and more about stabilizing those stitches. Okay, Dana, if you could pop to my hands, that would be awesome. I'm going to talk about 4 different ways of steeking. And the very first one is you literally can just cut, right? When you just cut, you get the cut steeking area looking like this, and I call them little worms, right? You get your cut stitches that look like little worms, and this freaks people out. Just to even look at it freaks people out. But as I stretch it, even as I come in and pick up my knitting, you'll see that those little sections just pop to the back and they're not going anywhere. Now, this is a sticky wool, right? So they're definitely not going anywhere on a sticky wool. You do that same thing with silk, and yeah, it's a hot mess, right? It's a hot mess. But the main thing I want to say is, if you think about it, if you're going, the way that knitting unravels is it unravels down, right? It doesn't unravel side to side. If I wanted to pick one of these rows out, I actually have to work really hard to get that yarn to come out toward the side. So no matter what, especially with wool, and even a more slippery wool, but no matter what, your knitting is stable horizontally. It is vertically that you tend to run up, and have your stitches sort of run away from you. Okay, so that's number 1. So because these are going to be headbands, right? They're going to stretch a lot on the sides. So we are going to sort of steek them and take some care and have them come down, because it's going to get a lot of a workout. On a sweater, it's a button band, and you, again, because you're buttoning and unbuttoning, it gets a bit of a workout, right? If it's armholes, it gets a bit of a workout. So we stabilize that area just so we can feel really confident that it's gonna stay exactly where we want it to stay. Okay, in the handout, the pattern, that's the word I'm searching for. In the pattern, there is super duper detail on every single one of these techniques. So, and I know this is recorded as well. So I would say if you want to do this, I would highly encourage you just to watch first and choose the method that you like best and then try it. I'd also encourage you to make a couple and then try them. So my favorite, because I'm lazy, my absolute favorite technique is needle felting. This can only be done with an unaltered wool. So this is Barocco Lannis, which is 100% virgin wool. Unaltered means it cannot be superwash and it cannot be like moth proofed, right? It can't be chemically coated, nothing like that. It needs to be unaltered, 100% wool, or let me just say at least 80% wool, and it'll needle felt. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop this puppy onto a pad. And to needle felt, you need little felting needles. So this is a multi-tool, and this little multi-tool is super handy. All it does is make it faster. I think this is Clover that makes these. Yeah, this is a Clover multi-tool. And so you can see that this has 5 of those little needle felting needles. And if I get really, really close, maybe not that close, there we go. You can see the little barbs on them. The little barbs right there are what pull the scales that are on the wool, pull them out and make them moosh. I was doing this the other day, and somebody at the shop told me that the tool is super similar to when you're doing locks for hair, right? And it's doing the same sort of things, which is we are just trying to make all of those fibers cling together. Now, this is a 7-stitch steeking area. The middle light stitch is the one that we're going to actually cut. So I don't have to work really, really hard at the whole table move, sorry. I don't have to work really, really hard at getting the entire area to needle felt. I just need that one column to needle felt. So when you're doing this, you're going to occasionally lift up because it will felt to whatever you are poking it into. And I'm going to do this fairly lightly because just for time's sake, this probably to do it really, really well, it takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes to do it. Okay, I'm going to lift it up again. I'm going to show you the inside. Can you see how you already are seeing some fluffiness right in there versus the ones that are unfluffed? That's what you're looking for, is that sort of fluffy texture. One of the joys is if you do this and you're like, ooh, I didn't do it quite enough. I really wish I had felted it just a little bit more. You can actually go back and refelt the edges. And please feel free to ask questions, you guys, if you have any. Dana's going to be checking the chat. So if there's anything that I skipped over and like why felt or what we're doing, feel free to ask me. The one question I got over and over again is, it's a headband. Why on earth would you, right, not just knit the whole thing in the round? And the answer is because this is a swatch for a sweater. That's really the answer. Okay, so we're fairly well sort of fluffied in there. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Again, if I were on my own and just doing this without lots and lots of time, I probably would do it a little bit more. I've got another sample over here that maybe shows you how it's just a little bit, you really are starting to see that the stitches start to blur, and the blurring is really what you're looking for. So we've got a little bit of blurring in these, but not quite as much. So I'm going to show you that we're going to come in, and the key to steeking is small bites. Okay, so I'm going to come up to the edge and do one little beat, one little bite. I'm going to come in, do another little bite. You want super sharp scissors, not really big ones. The little bitty bites are less important on the needle felting, but you might as well get into the habit of little bitty bites. Okay, remember the little worms? The little worms don't happen because I've needle felted that edge. I actually felted pretty darn well in that short period of time. Let's just say that I wanted them to felt a little bit more than they did. I could grab that, come back, and just get in there and do those edges just a little bit more to get them just a little more felty. So just FYI, if you need anything on that, you actually can go back and do it. But isn't that beautiful? And it's so easy, right? It's so fast and so easy. So if you're using an unaltered wool, needle felting is my first choice. It's super nice. Okay. Number 2 is, I'm going in order of my favorite, also in order of complexity, which probably explains a lot about me since I tend to be a little on the lazy side. So this one is knit out of Maxima. Maxima is a monosil Uruguay yarn that is also a non-superwash. So I could needle felt this as well. So just as a quick FYI. But we're going to do a technique called a back stitch. Again, I have my dark column, right? The main color column, I'm just going to call it that, right here is the one that we're going to cut. The goal of all steeking is to stabilize the stitches just on either side of the column that you're going to cut, okay? So I'm going to be working on these 2 super colorful edges. So the very first thing when we do the back stitch is we want to come in onto the edge and we want to just tie our yarn onto that edge, because this gets steeked, right, and AKA cut. And once you pick up your stitches, that whole area, that whole area folds under, okay? So this is the area that was steeked, and it folds under and stays on the inside. So whatever you do on this edge, like I'm tying on my yarn, will not be seen on the right side of what you're wearing. So the fact that I just tied a knot in a super contrasting yarn won't matter. And I'm going to suggest to you that you want to use a super contrasting yarn for the techniques that I'm showing you so that you can really see what you're doing. Okay, I used this multicolor yarn so that you could see each individual stitch. The goal for this is we're not so much coming into the stitch itself, we're coming into the bar between. So if you think about a knit stitch, the knit stitch always has a bar between it, right? And that's that little purl bump that's on the back. So we're going to come up, this is called back stitch because we're going to come up into the second stitch and we're coming from behind. So we're looking for that little bar that goes through there. And I'm going to come into the blue one, right? Because the blue one belongs here. I'm going to come up through that little blue bar. And come back at the very edge, which is going to be a brown bar right at the very, very edge.
And I have a question.
Yeah.
Cindy's asking, does a pattern that incorporates steeking include the steeking area as part of the pattern when you're casting on and knitting?
They should all tell you how the steeking area is going to work, right? So like on the pattern that I give you guys, I actually have on the headband, I give you the chart includes the steeking area. In the sweater that we're going to do, the charts do not include the steeking area because by then you should be used to it and you're going to know that the steeking area always alternates the colors, if that makes some sense. But the pattern should always tell you where the steeking area should go, if the steeking area is considered the beginning of round or end of round, and how you should knit it. There are tons of patterns that will checkerboard the steeking area, which honestly looks super duper cool, but I am a very lazy knitter. And the reason I don't checkerboard mine is I want my easy columns to see, right? I don't want any confusion as to where I'm going and which stitches I'm going into. So my personal preference, even if somebody told me to checkerboard it, I'm not going to. I'm going to actually do it in these really visible columns. Cindy, if that doesn't answer your question, let me know. Okay, so I'm coming in classic backstitch fashion. I'm opening my little stitches. I'm coming into the yellow one, going back in where I came out, coming back up into the next one. And you're doing these little bites all the way up. And it's both catching the bars, so you can see on the inside, catching the bars on both sides of it, right? So it's always a little bit more visible on the back than the front, but again, this goes back. Yes, I'm going into the bar between. Let me see if I can just really slowly show you this. Right there. And I'm using a very sharp needle, right? Because I want to pierce that bar. Because you guys know when you split a stitch and it gets sticky and it's super freaking annoying, that's really what we're looking for. We're going into those bars in between. If it's a ply yarn, this happens to be a single ply. If it's a plied yarn, you're going into those plies. Right, coming up and then coming back down where we were. Every one of those little stitches, and you're going to each one of them. Now, there are lots of different ways to do this, and I have seen people where they go up one side of the stitch and back down the other. Sure, that would work just fine too. I find that this works really, really well, and I can get it all done in one pass. So I think it's just going to be a matter of, you know, what you prefer as you try it. So this is a medium level of security, right? So it's going to keep everything from unraveling, which it's not going to anyway, right? So it's a medium level of security. But if you really want super duper duper secure, then you would do our last one, which is a crochet method. So those of you that are more nervous Nellies with this stuff, crochet method is probably going to be your buddy. But I strongly encourage you to try a couple things because you'll find out just how stable knitting really is. Any other questions, Dana?
Let's see. Well, Diane said earlier, she said your stranded knitting class was awesome and she became obsessed and made many of those hats.
Oh, yay. They're so fun.
It was so lovely. I can include the link to that class, the recap link in the email that goes out tomorrow in case anyone else missed it and is interested in checking that out. And then let's see. Felicia just asked, why are you doing that technique? Maybe specifically this, the back.
So the backstitch technique is good for yarns that are like a superwash wool that you cannot needle felt, right? Or, you know, quite frankly, needle felting requires some tools. So if you don't have needle felting tools and you don't want to go buy needle felting tools, this technique would totally work. And so I'm showing you multiple ways because that's who I am as a teacher, and kind of letting you know. So that if you're using a superwash or a non-superwash wool, that needle felting technique is about as stable as anything you could ever possibly do, right? Because there's no worminess. Those little stitches stay all together really beautifully. In the if you don't have those tools or the yarn is altered, that technique will not work. Okay, when you get to the end, you're going to come up and you're going to tie a knot again at the other end to secure it. And then one more time through.
For the sweater knit along.
Yeah.
Jessie is asking, will we get the pattern in advance? The materials list is included in the description of the knit along, and I'll put that link in the chat again, so you know exactly how much yarn to get for your size. But what do you think, Molly? Should they have the pattern in advance to take a look at everything?
Definitely get you the pattern in advance. So it is right now with my test knitters who've done an amazing job. Huge shout out to Lynn and Christina. Done an amazing job of testing this pattern. So hopefully it will have very, very few, if any, mistakes. And they are taking one last look for me. And I'm doing one last read through of it, just looking for grammatical errors and other things. So I will hopefully have that pattern to Dana by the end of this week. So you're not going to have it massively in advance, but you should have it before. We do this Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you'll have it before, definitely before Tuesday. So you can take a look through. You can cast on before, like if you're a slow caster oner, but the whole point of it being a class/knit along is that we are taking our time in it and really going through all kinds of stuff. To understand exactly what we're doing. So there's no need for you to do anything in advance. This headband is your gauge swatch. So you don't have to do any other gauge swatch for it. This is your actual gauge swatch.
Awesome. And then let's see, Diane. So Diane's asking, does the knit along sweater have buttons or not? And we have this, the sample is behind Molly. So
when we take a break, I will, and you talk about everything else, I'll put it on so people, and I'll model it.
Yay. Okay, awesome. Perfect.
How are we doing? We're doing okay. Okay, we're doing. This is a little bit of a slow and slightly tedious process. But again, it is a very good one for one that is not. If I start to inch over too much, let me know. I even have my little lines right here. Somehow working around a phone is always a little bit challenging. Okay. So What would I not use this one on? I would say if you're using a really slick yarn. So a lot of people will tell you you have to use wool to steek. Not really true. I mean, you could definitely steek in cotton, in plant-based things. I don't know how much I would steek in like a reeled silk, right? Some in a tensile, in a pure viscose, something that's like super duper slippery, because the color work will be a little messy with it. But in blends, you could totally get away with it. And this technique is going to be best for a slightly more, slightly stickier, non-superwash yarn. It'll be good for the superwash wools. It'll be good for like a cotton, anything like that. It'll work. The one thing I will say is you'll notice I'm using a yarn that is significantly lighter in weight. So I knit the piece in a worsted weight, and I'm using Fino, which is a fingering weight wool and silk to do the stabilizing, the back stitch. So I went down, what, 3 sizes of yarn to do that. So that's important to note. Also, you want to use a yarn that will be similar if you're going to wash it, right? Especially if you're using a superwash wool, you want to make sure you use a superwash wool to do the stabilizing. And that would be like a sock yarn, would work great if you used a superwash wool for the piece. And that's because you want to make sure if you wash it in the washing machine that your stitches here don't felt and shrink up. So lighter weight, similar material is going to be your buddy on this one. And let me just, I'm attaching it to the other end. And again, I'm just coming through, making a knot and getting it to be nice and stable and not going to go anywhere. And I also do recommend, I know I've said it again, but I'm going to say it one more time. I really do recommend that you use a good contrasting color in it so that you can see the stitches as you're doing it. So I'm not doing that just for my benefit for this whole thing, but also so that you guys can see it. On the inside, that's what it looks like.
Susan asked, the bar that you're stitching through is it actually one of the brown bars in this case?
It's not. So the brown bars that are behind it, let's just look at this real quick. The floats are the brown bars on that. Let me get to, there you go. The brown bars over here are the floats. Now, you don't necessarily want to go through those. You're kind of wrapping around them. What you're going through is the one underneath it, which is the stitch. So that's the actual bar of the stitch. That's what you're going through. But you're essentially going through them both a little bit, but the one you're really looking for is the one that's the stitch. Let me open this up. So if you look on the inside, a whole knit stitch wraps up and around, right? So let's find a good contrasty one. Look at this little green one down here. Seeing that little green one? It goes up and through the 2 legs of the red one. It is that bar that you're going through right here, right? That little one. Now you're going to catch the brown that's right underneath it, but you can see on the top that green one, and that's what you're going into.
And then several folks are wondering, can you do this technique with acrylic yarn?
Oh, acrylic. Thank you for saying acrylic. I knew there was some like really important one that I was missing. Yeah. So acrylic is graded in the same way that wool is. So acrylic can go from like a super, super fine, really, really soft, really slick. Who am I thinking of? Like a Karen Simply Soft. I think I have the right name there. And that one is going to be pretty slippery. So like a Karen Super Soft, I would use the crochet technique, which I'm going to show you next. For the stickier acrylics, of course, the most famous one is like a Red Heart. For those sort of sticky, crunchy acrylics, this technique would be perfect, right? Because that's a pretty stable yarn, and it's going to kind of cling to itself a little bit. And this one would be great. You cannot needle felt those, right? for obviously, and sorry, I'm saying that out loud because I'm sure you're like, yeah, duh. But you cannot needle felt those, but you could definitely do this one. Any other questions so far? Okay, I'm gonna cut. Ready? I'm coming up the little brown column. Again, I'm taking little bites and I'm making sure that I'm not cutting into anything that I've just stabilized. So I'm avoiding all of those areas. I'm gonna pull this apart, itty bitty bites, right up the middle. Okay. So when we do that, I might have gotten one of my bars. Don't do that when you do this. I'll just go back in. Okay, but this is actually a great little lesson. If you do get one of your little bars, just come back. Oh, it's not a bar. I'm safe. It's one of the edge stitches. Okay, so it's like, see the white that's right there. So see how you get a little bit of that sense of worminess in these little guys right down here, and that was a longer float that went across. And you get a little bit of that sense, but not much of the little frills that are coming loose. But don't worry about those because it's going to again fold right over. And like we did with these, you're going to tack them right down so they're not going to go anywhere. And it's very, very stable. They're not going to go there. You're going to be fine. One of the things that I haven't done yet, but I'm going to, especially for the sweater, is you can cover that whole area with a grosgrain ribbon. And then it totally won't go anywhere and you're totally safe. Okay, Dana, this is a really good time for a break. And then we'll do the harder one.
Yay, perfect. Okie dokie. I am going to go ahead and, oh, before I jump in, Jesse's asking, what brand of scissors are you using, Molly?
I have no idea what they're called. We sell them at the shop though. And but they're just big handled. What I love about them is you can get I have big old hands, right? And you can get your hand really in there and they're super sharp.
Super
but they are
cool.
at the store.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to just briefly share my screen so folks can see the details here for the knit along. But then Molly's trying on the cardigan so you guys can see it live. So this is a photo of the cardigan like in progress. So you can see the steeking area. This is the Falling into Autumn cardigan knit along. And so it's over 3 sessions starting next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central. So same time, same day. And a couple of the sessions will be 2 hours. One of the sessions will be 1 hour. It'll be live with Molly. It's going to be a smaller, more intimate group. We're going to actually host it like a Zoom meeting. So folks can turn on their cameras if they want. You can hold up your work to the camera if you have a question like, oh, why does this look this way? And you know, you're also totally welcome to leave your camera off and stay muted if you just want to follow along. So it's live with Molly. You're going to get the expert advice for making your own beautiful cardigan through knitting it like a traditional sweater and then cutting it to make your open face and button band down the front. So starting next Tuesday, it'll be Tuesday, August 20th. Then the following Tuesday, August 27th, we're going to have a break over Labor Day week. And then the following Tuesday, September 10th will be the final session. Normally we would charge $20 a class, so it would be $60 for this knit along in this intimate setting, this in-depth class series. But it's half off. You're going to get it for $30, and that price is already in Eventbrite, so you don't need a coupon code or anything. So for $10 a session, you can join a little group and learn how to knit this beautiful cardigan. So the link there is autumncardigankal.eventbrite.com, and I will drop that link in the chat momentarily. And then the last thing I want to mention, and then we're going to take a look at the cardigan live, is we offer a magazine subscription to anybody who signs up and attends our Favecraft Studio Live classes. It's a discounted introductory offer. ilikeknitting.com is a digital knitting magazine. It's been around for 10 years already, which is really exciting. And it's completely digital. There's 6 issues that publish per year. And then there are special collections that are released. I believe there's a book club that goes along with it. And the advantage to a digital magazine is when you sign up, you get access to all of the previously published, tech edited, ads-free patterns. So we've got a decade's worth of beautiful knitting patterns that you get instant access to. And the introductory offer is just $5. So you get an annual subscription, so the next 6 issues, plus all the previously published patterns for just $5 US. And the link to get that offer is ilikeknitting.com/virtual24. And I will put that link in the chat and as well. All right, Molly, let's see that beautiful.
That's an amazing price for all of that, is all I have to say. Okay, so this is the cardigan. It's very simple, you guys, right? So it's the same exact colorwork motif with the branches that you're doing in your headband. Goes all the way around, right? And it's a sort of, you can choose your length. This is a fairly standard length of a cardigan. There's a tiny, tiny bit of shaping in it so that we look even thinner, even more shapely, I should say. And then you've got mirrored branches on your sleeves. So those of you that have never taken a sweater class with me, and I know we have some people on there that know me, I just want to let you know that as a teacher, like I'm a yarn shop owner, right? I design and I love to design and it's super fun, but I'm a yarn shop owner and teacher. And so my goal is to do things that make you want to knit more and do really well and to be really successful. So when we teach this, it's going to be all about the things that make you successful. Why do we choose certain increases, right? How do we choose different finishes for the neckline? I love a more open one because I'm enjoying my own personal summer, right? But you could definitely do something that is a little bit more closed. We talk about how to custom fit sleeves, right? All of that sort of thing while we're knitting. You can also knit the pattern exactly as is without any problem. But my goal as a teacher is to make you more independent and feel like you don't always have to pay attention to what the designer did. Sometimes you can do whatever the heck you want to do. Because all of our bodies are different. So that's sort of a little bit about it, and stuck inside. So I'm hoping you join us, and it's a great price on a class. And Dana, is the class recorded and they get access to it?
Yes, yeah. Only the people who sign up, of course, get access to the recording, but everybody will have the recordings again within 24 hours of the class airing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's awesome. So yeah, so come and join us, right? It's a great chance. You will learn way more than just steeking a cardigan. In my opinion, you don't have to have any sweater experience to do this. It will be helpful to have a little bit of colorwork experience, but quite frankly, you'll get that colorwork experience when you do your homework of your gauge swatch. And so, if you could do it on the gauge swatch, you could do it on sweater. So come join us. It'll be fun. Okay, let's do hands again. And let's talk about the crochet technique. Okay. So the yarn that I have here is Ali B and Peekaboo, which are 2 local dyers to us. And so this is really super yummy, superwash merino wool. And so this absolutely cannot be needle felted. I could choose 100% to do either my backstitch process, or I could choose to do the crochet technique. The crochet technique is a little more complicated. I'm just realizing I chose a color that looks a lot like what I have. So let me just choose a different color. Grab this little guy. So the very first thing you're going to do is just throw a slip knot on your crochet hook. I am using, this is worsted weight. And so I'm going to use a worsted weight yarn. I knit this on a size 7 needle. And so I'm going to choose roughly a size 7-ish needle for my my crocheting again. Okay, so I'm actually on an F. I'm going to chain just a couple, just to sort of get me away from that slip knot so that I have a little bit of a more stable area. So I chained like 4. When you do this, you want to hold your headband to where the steeking row, which is this row, is above where you're going to work. And it's never a bad idea to mark your steeking column, even though it's green. And I know that this is my steeking column, it still isn't a horrible thing to do, to come through and just say, yep, that's it. So I'm just going to pull that yarn through. So I know this is the column that I'm going to be cutting into. And that's because when we crochet, we are going to fold this in half, and I'm going to be crocheting one leg of each stitch together. This is the other joy of having those two columns of two separate colors side by side, is I'm gonna snag a yellow stitch, yellow leg, right, and a green leg, and that's what I'm gonna be crocheting together. So I'm gonna do it the first time, coming up this side, and then I will turn it around, again, always keeping the steeking area away from me, right, and toward the top. I will fold it again and grab the other set. The reason I'm being so specific about where that steeking area should be is because when we crochet, we want the stitches to come to fold away from the area that we're going to cut, so that we're not cutting into our stitches. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is attach my yarn to the edge. So I'm coming in to the edge stitch under the yellow. I don't want to attach where I'm going to cut in the green column. So I'm grabbing both of those little edge stitches. I'm not the best crocheter, so no mocking me. And I'm going to come through and just slip stitch right onto that edge. Okay, I'm now going to fold, and I'm going to be looking for this. The first stitch is always the hardest, by the way. I'm going to be grabbing one stitch of each, right? So one yellow and one green, pull my yarn through, and we are slip stitching. You can do it. I have definitely seen, and you can do this as single crochet, but my goal is to keep this as small as possible, because you already have quite a bit of bulk in the steeking area when it folds over. So to add another row of single crochet on top of that, to me, is a little bit bulkier than I want it to be. So I'm just coming in, I'm grabbing one leg of each and pulling through, right? And pull through all three. Anybody needs me to slow down on that, let me know, but just one of each. This is the joy of also using a high contrast other color. You see all three of those loops right on your crochet hook, and you're pulling through all three.
Molly, I have a question.
Yeah.
For the steeking area, why have 7 columns instead of just 3?
3 or 5? Okay, that is a great question. And the reason for that is, remember, our goal is to stabilize these stitches so that our motif is not going to be interrupted at all. So when we come in to pick, this is, by the way, a 5-stitch steeking area. And so when we come in to pick up those stitches, you are pulling, when you pick up these bars, you are pulling that horizontal bar. And if all you had was 3 and this was the only stitch that was left over, then you would be pulling that stitch out, right? And so you would literally be trying to come in like right here. And that's where you have that ability of grabbing the wrong thing and this little thing coming all the way undone. So there's not enough of it to actually pick up. So I am, I've done both 5 and 7 stitches. The 5 is definitely less bulky, but it's also a little harder to make it really neat. And so if you're a super finicky knitter, feel free to do 5. If you are a little bit lazier knitter like me, and you don't want to have to work really hard, then that 7 is sort of your buddy. Okay, I'm coming all the way up to the end, getting those last 2 legs, coming through both. And then again, I want to make sure that I'm not coming into and stabilizing into the area I'm going to cut. I'm coming all the way over here to the edge, right over here, and tying it onto the edge. And I can cut it and come through. Okay, now I'm going to come back the other side. Oh, that's why I marked that middle stitch. I'm going to come back the other side and do the same thing. some more yarn. Any other questions so far?
Heidi
Anybody
is
freaking out?
asking, oh,
Go ahead.
Heidi's asking, could you also whip stitch the area that you're slip stitching instead?
So yes, and you can see on these, I did whip stitch, right? So I just whip stitched it right down onto, that's not a very good one, there, right onto the material. So you can just cut, right, and whip stitch and be 100% totally fine, even on a superwash wool, because again, it doesn't want to go anywhere, right? It really doesn't. It feels like it wants to go somewhere, but it doesn't want to go anywhere. And so yeah, you could totally do that. But most people want a little bit more security. And the less sticky your wool is, the just a little bit harder it is to handle. Okay, coming there into the edge, slip stitching into the edge. And now I'm coming up that other end, other side of my steeking area. Okay, and grabbing this time a yellow one first. I think that's the same thing. And coming through all three. And then like the ability to find super fun ribbons to cover that area is really fun. I got a really cute autumn leaves that I have for mine. And I got another one that has like little tomatoes. I have to decide between which one I want. And it just gives you, because they're not the prettiest, right? The little steeking area, it's not the prettiest, especially if you use a good contrast where you can really see what you're doing. So to cover that up, makes your sweater look a little more finished. That's the one thing I haven't done yet to my sweater, and that mostly because I want you guys to be able to see what it looks like. But that is the last thing that we would do in class, is talk about that and how to sew that ribbon on. And then we're just coming through. If you ever feel like you've caught something else into that, take it out, because it's really important that you're not splitting a stitch or catching something extra on the crochet method, because you do not want to catch the bar that's in the middle, because that's technically what you're cutting. You can also do the crochet method one more stitch out. So not around the middle section. And I did that on this one, right? So you can see the little fluffies are there because I did it one more stitch away from the middle one. So you can do that. And this is the more traditional way of doing it, but either way would work. This is where all of your practicing of your little bitty bites is going to come in handy. And our last legs. Okay, coming through all. And then again, I'm going to come out this way, attach it to the edge a little further away. I do like to weave my ends in before I steek, right? Not these ends, but the ends of the headband. I like to do that before I steek, just so that all that stuff gets away. Remember when you're weaving your ends in to weave them in away from the steeking area so that you're not cutting those ends. It won't matter a ton, but it still will make it just a little easier. Okay, all right, are we ready? I'm going to take this little extra row of stuff out. And so now we're pulling this apart and we're cutting the bars, right? And we're going to do our very best not to get in here and cut any of that purple. So I'm going to come in and do very little bites again. And I don't know if you can see how much I'm tugging on it, but I'm really tugging apart so that I can really see in there and I can really see those little bars. And that's what I'm getting. If I were doing this on my own and not on TV, so to speak, I would have it laid down flat. I would have this tucked away from it so I don't cut my underside as well, so that I can really see and I can come in and cut that. If you guys have those rotary cutters, you could. I've had people ask me that before, but the problem with the rotary ones is they tend to be pretty big and super duper sharp. And if you get off track, it's going to go poorly. So I would highly recommend just super sharp little itty bitty scissors. And you're just doing 1 or 2 little strands at a time. So this technique is awesome for your more slippery acrylics. It's awesome for superwash wool. It would work on cotton, kind of pretty much anything. Again, you'd have to still be really careful of something really, really slippery, but it would work. If you're doing something slippery, you want your yarn that you're using to catch these areas to not be as slippery, right? But again, otherwise you want to use a material that's going to be about the same in a weight that is about the same with a crochet hook that is about the same. Not bigger. If you're going to air one way or the other, air a little smaller. But on a headband, if it pulls in just a little bit, like this one did, I used a smaller hook on this one. And if it pulls in just a little bit, it doesn't really matter. But on your sweater, it will, because that is your front button band, right? So you want to sort of practice consistent tension that's going to be about the same as the tension of what's right around you. And that is what it looks like when you crochet it. Okay, any questions at all about any of those 3 techniques? The yarns you would use, why you would do it, what they look like. Okay, so let me do one other thing. So the pattern gives you also 3 choices of how you finish them. You can do, right, a button as you come all the way down in. Dawn likes the crochet method. You can just come in and just, right, sort of seam them together. I did a little garter to make it a little bit stretchier. Or you can do I-cord ties so that you can tie them. If you would never wear a headband, I totally understand. They don't look the best on me, although that is me in the picture wearing them. But they're actually like shockingly cute, and they're great little ear warmers. So they'll make a good gift for somebody else in your family, or just do it as your gauge swatch. But I would tell you the other joy of doing it this way is it also does help you with how to pick up and knit on both a ribbon and right next to your color work. And that picking up and knitting is going to look exactly like it does on your cardigan, right? So that exactly the same. So that practice is going to be well worth every moment of doing it. This has only been steam blocked. I need to do the soaking block, but it's just the stitches will look even prettier after we do that. Whew. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts? I would love to know which one people liked the best.
I can see why the needle felting is your favorite, because that was so easy.
Right? So much better. Yep, needle felting crochet. The crochet method is very stable, right? So those of you that really love that, it really is. It is the most stable, but it is also the most work of all of them. Lynn is one of my test knitters for the sweater. She's going to do the back stitch. So Lynn and Christina both test knit this for me, and oh my gosh, their yarn choices are beautiful. So I'm hoping to get pictures of them, of their color choices as well, because it's fun to see lots of different color choices. If I want to do variegated yarn for the sweater, how many skeins do I need? So you guys, the leaves, if you do them in one color or 3, you just don't need a ton. So 1 skein of variegated yarn would be plenty of it. If you did branches, leaves, I think it branches, leaves, and even the I-cord, you're still good with 1 skein. I have used those same skeins for like 40 of these headbands. It's the main body that really needs that 4 to 7 skeins. Awesome. It did go fast, didn't it, Cindy? Okay, any other thoughts or questions for me, Dana, that you saw? Because I was talking as stuff came through. Everybody good? Okay.
I think that's everything. Yeah.
I'm just going to say, come join us for the class. It's going to be really fun. Can I say that it's been a long time since you guys have done a paid class?
You can say that. Yeah. If anybody's been with us since 2022, 2021, I think maybe even 2021 might have been our last paid classes. It's been a long time.
So let's prove that this is a technique that's worthy, right? This is something that is in demand, and it'll be fun. We'll have a lot of fun, and it'll be not the webinar format, but the format where you can ask questions and be live, right there. It won't be a super huge class. It'll be good. How do they get a recording of this?
They will get it in their email tomorrow. Automatically, they'll get the recording, but exactly 24 hours it should come. So
awesome. Oh, good. Everybody had so much fun. I'm so glad. It's been a total pleasure. Dana, thank you so much for having me. Thanks everybody for being here, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Molly. If anybody is not following the Hands-On Knitting Center already on social media, please do so. And if anybody has questions about this upcoming class, more like the logistics, I guess, of it, then email me at dneal@primecp.com. And yeah, check out the Hands-On Knitting Center, especially if you're local to Southern California. Is that?
Yeah. So Redlands, California.
Redlands. Okay, fantastic. Yay. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you, Molly, so much. This was a fascinating class.
Totally my pleasure. Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye, everybody.